testing is very, very important, not only for patient management, but also for disease surveillance. For example, to assess the prevalence of a disease, for outbreak management, so that you have all the necessary information at hand to be able to define and apply adequate measures to contain the spread of the disease, but also to prevent people from suffering and dying. What we are seeing in low-income countries and in middle-income countries is that many of them, particularly in Africa and Asia, don't have the necessary resources. They don't have the necessary infrastructure in place. And they don't have sufficient and adequate decentralized laboratory capacities.
The main challenge has been, while there have been a number of tests that came out, a number of tests that were developed very rapidly, the question of appropriateness of what type of test to do in what setting. And at the same time, also understanding that it's not just about the test, because while the manufacturers were focused on developing their own tests, a lot of other cofactors came in. Ancillary things like you need materials like swabs or other reagents that are needed to perform these tests. People that are needed. Essentially, this is a very resource. Many of the tests that came out were resource intensive. How do we ensure
resources?
That
yes.
Resources, people, as well as machinery, equipments, and so on. How do you move things around in a global economy when many of the countries were shutting down their borders? How do you ensure there's a global access to supply? And the global supply security essentially can be maintained in the midst of a pandemic.
It's an end-to-end effort to try and ensure the development, the procurement, and the allocation of vaccine. As I say, 2 billion doses by the end of next year, which is our sense of what would be needed to end the acute phase of the pandemic, i.e. being able to vaccinate priority populations across the world. And it's our effort to do that in a completely global fashion. On the vaccine development side, the idea is that basically it's risk pooling. We invest in more candidates than any country can, and we have experts managing it. And so by betting on COVAX, you're giving yourself a better chance of having access to one vaccine that wins than you are going out as a country and choosing one or two. There is an unprecedented amount of vaccine development ongoing at present, over 300 candidates, 35 in clinical trials, of which CEPI is supporting 8. And so far, the data that we're seeing on the most advanced is very positive. They need to go through phase 3 trials to see how they continue to proceed. And as I say, the data is encouraging, but I think we would rather be cautious on the prediction and emphasize that there cannot be any cutting of corners. Safety and efficacy concerns are absolutely central. And I imagine this may come up later on, but ensuring trust of public is absolutely central to any vaccine being of any use. And so ensuring that we are developing vaccines with the highest standards of safety and efficacy is more important than speed.
We need the WHO to set up a fair allocation mechanism, which they are working on. But on the other hand, we need all companies and all governments to adhere to this fair allocation mechanism that allocates vaccines, medicines, and diagnostics regarding public health needs, and not allocating them to them who have the best resources or the most resources and the most money.
Partnership-wise, we're actually doing really well. The community has rallied around it. Everybody has recognized the need for global cooperation, and the ACT Accelerator that sort of came together did provide a really good platform. Funding-wise, it's we are at about fraction of the total need, which is the same song you'll hear no matter who you talk to in this, because despite the ongoing pandemic and despite the challenges of what it needs to tackle them, that continues to be a problem.
As an overall ask, needs like a level of political leadership, which has been shown in setting up the ACT Accelerator, shown in providing some of the initial funds, but now is the point where, if the initial fundraising was kind of the deposit on buying a house, now we actually need to pay for the rest of the house and make sure that what needs to be developed can.